Freen and Becky, beyond the spotlight, a bond unseen. What the camera can't hold. The camera captures light, captures movement, captures moments, but it has never been good at capturing what lingers. Between Freen Sorocha and Becky Armstrong, what matters most has always lived outside the frame. In the seconds before the lens focuses, in the breath taken after the applause ends, in the space where nothing is being performed. Beyond the spotlight, their bond does not disappear. It settles. And that is where its power lies. Two worlds that shouldn't have collided. On paper, Freen and Becky came from different worlds. Different paths, different temperaments, different ways of holding space. Freen carries herself with calm restraint, observant, measured, rarely revealing more than necessary. Becky moves with openness, expressive, intuitive, emotionally transparent in a way that feels effortless. They were not designed to mirror each other. They were designed to balance. When their worlds first collided through work, it didn't look dramatic. There was no instant spectacle, no loud chemistry demanding attention. What happened instead was quieter, a gradual recognition, not fascination, not intensity, recognition, as if something familiar had quietly stepped into the room. The connection that grew without announcement. Some bonds begin with declaration. This one began with attention. Freen noticed things early. How Becky processed pressure, how she laughed when nervous, how her energy shifted in unfamiliar spaces. Becky noticed too. Freen's stillness, her consistency, the way she stayed grounded even when chaos surrounded them. Neither commented on it. Neither needed to. They adjusted themselves naturally. Standing closer, speaking softer, pacing each other without discussion. Nothing about it was strategic. Nothing about it was planned. That's why it lasted. When chemistry became something else. Chemistry is visible. Connection is not. On screen people saw sparks and assumed that was the story. But off screen something else formed. They became each other's baseline. When things went well they celebrated quietly. When things went badly, they stabilized each other without dramatizing it. There was no rush to define what they were. No urgency to explain. They didn't need to name it for it to exist. Comfort as a shared language. Comfort is rarely discussed because it lacks spectacle. But between Freen and Becky, comfort became their primary language. It showed in the way Freen would subtly shift her position to shield Becky from noise or pressure. Not possessively, but protectively. It showed in how Becky could soften Freen's guardedness without forcing vulnerability, simply by being present. No reassurance speeches. No emotional displays. Just reliability. And reliability builds bonds that don't fracture under scrutiny. Fame and what it tries to take. Fame demands access. It wants answers. It wants clarity. It wants ownership. What it could never take from Freen and Becky was their internal alignment. They understood early that visibility could distort truth. So they learned restraint. Not out of fear but out of respect. They shared what was safe. They protected what was not. This wasn't secrecy. It was boundaries. And boundaries are how real bonds survive public spaces. The silence people misunderstood. Fans often mistake silence for distance. But silence, in their case, was where everything lived. Silence meant, I don't need to explain myself to you. I trust you not to misread me. I know you'll still be here. They could sit beside each other without filling the air. They could share looks that needed no translation. They could exist without performing closeness. That kind of silence doesn't come from absence. Comes from security. How they moved when no one was watching. When cameras weren't pointed their way. The bond didn't dissolve. It became softer. More ordinary. More real. They didn't cling. They didn't dramatize. They simply moved in rhythm. Matching steps, matching energy, matching presence. It's easy to fake intensity. It's impossible to fake ease. And ease was always their tell. Why fans felt it without being told. People didn't fall in love with Freen and Becky because of what they said. They fell in love with what wasn't said. The restraint, patience, The care taken not to consume each other publicly. Viewers recognized something rare, a bond that didn't ask to be believed, only observed. That's why it resonated across cultures, languages, and fandoms. Because everyone understands quiet care. Misunderstandings that never broke them. Rumors came. Speculation followed. Narratives were written by strangers. What mattered is that none of it altered how they treated each other. They didn't correct the world. They didn't react defensively. They stayed consistent. Consistency is the strongest response to noise. The strength of not claiming. What makes their bond feel mature is the absence of ownership. No one is claimed. No one is controlled. No one is reduced to a role. They meet as equals. They separate as individuals. They reconnect without fear. That freedom is what makes the bond durable. When one needed the other most. There were moments of pressure, visible and invisible. Moments when exhaustion showed. When expectations weighed heavy. When words failed. In those moments they didn't rescue each other. They anchored. Look. Hand near, not gripping. A pause that said, "You don't have to perform right now." Those moments never went viral. They weren't meant to. They were private acts of care. Why this bond outlasts projects. Projects end. Series conclude. Schedules change. What remains is not proximity, but regard. Their bond was never dependent on circumstance. It wasn't fueled by shared scenes. It didn't rely on external structure. It was built on how they treated each other when nothing was required. That's why it persists. The unseen promise. There was never a promise spoken aloud. No declarations. No vows. No public affirmations. But there was an unspoken agreement. I will not turn you into something you are not. I will not use our closeness as currency. I will protect what matters, even if no one understands. That promise is why the bond feels intact. Why it feels timeless. Trends fade. Ships dissolve. Tension shifts. What feels timeless about Freen and Becky is that their bond isn't built on reaction. It's built on choice. The daily choice to remain considerate. The repeated choice to stay aligned. The quiet choice to protect something real from becoming spectacle. Time doesn't erode bonds like that. Beyond the spotlight, still true. When the lights go out, nothing collapses. There is no void. No absence. No confusion. There is simply two people who know how to exist together without explanation. And that is the unseen bond. Not loud. Not dramatic. Not consumable. But real.